took my mother 3 years of struggle and pain to organize a union. Now in our household, and I was the youngest, you'd come home and the obligation was to get your homework done in the dining room before you went out and played or did anything else. In our old colonial style house, in fact it was pictured in some of my early advertisements, there was a phone room. It was kind of this little area behind the staircase up to the second floor. And that's where the phone in the house was. And my mother would get home from her job as a school nurse, because we were on slightly different schedules, about a half hour before I got home from Franklin School. And I'd be doing my homework, and as soon as my mother got in the door, she'd get on the phone. And she would start calling the dental hygienists, the school nurses, the public health nurses, and the nurses at the school, at the skilled nursing facility, Smith House. And day in and day out, she would beg and cajole and argue. Her chief argument against what she wanted to do was, well, we're professionals. We shouldn't be members of a union. We should have an association. Well, in those days, associations in Connecticut didn't have arbitration rights. Didn't have rights to file on behalf of their fellow employees' grievances. Couldn't undo some of the damages that were being done under that leadership. Took her 3 years. My aunt, Marguerite Costello, was her ally, and a woman by the name of Rita Hogan, a young nurse at the time, was the other troublemaker. And after 3 years, they got enough people to vote to form that local. Now that happens not to be part of the SEIU family anymore, or never was, I should say. It's Local 465 and the AFSCME Council for Alignment. And interestingly enough, that local is headed by my cousin Deidre Ansbach, or Deidre Costello Ansbach, my cousin, the daughter of my aunt. And my sister-in-law Yvonne, a school nurse who's raised 11 children, is a member of that local as well. About file grievances, or to that it is fundamental in working for the people of Connecticut, in what we do at state level, and with respect to obligations that we have to our retirement. People have criticized me, you know, Mr. Foley, disagreements with labor. We're always going to have disagreements, but we get around a table and we resolve those differences. And we know that if we can't resolve those differences, we have a system set up that makes sure that no one side wins. We go to a third party and they get to make a decision and they get to decide what's right and what's fair. When Republicans talk about, in this state, suspending or taking away the right to arbitration, what they're really telling you is they have a target on the backs of everyone in this room. They are coming for you. They are coming for your children. They are coming for your grandchildren. They are at war with the middle class. They don't believe that you should have the right to stand up for your fellow man and woman in a negotiated setting. I do. That's the difference. And you've got to make sure that we win this election. Where would we be? Where would we be without that hard-won right? Where would we be in this nation? You know, I hear the rhetoric that goes around that all of the problems of the economy are the fault of federal workers and municipal workers and state workers, as if we have forgotten what happened on Wall Street, as if we have forgotten what happened in Washington during the 8 years of the Bush administration, as if we are walking around with amnesia and don't understand that the rights of the rich were put ahead of the rights of those of us in the middle class, that somebody cared more for them than they cared for us, that somebody worried more about the future of their children and their children's ability to get great wealth as opposed to our children's ability to go to college or have health care or see their parents because they're not working a second or third or fourth job. There is a difference in this state. And it's time that we rise up and understand, for the first time in a generation, we could elect a Democratic governor who shares our values and a Democratic lieutenant governor who has stood with you repeatedly. Nancy Wyman and Dan Malloy are you. We come from the same stock. Day in and day out. We have interests that are together. We've got to get this job done. That the road ahead of us us after this election, should we be elected, is not an easy one. This state has been run into the ground and run poorly. Hard decisions that should have been made to put our house in order and to invest in technologies and areas that would produce jobs were not made. It's going to be tough work. We're facing a $3.4 billion deficit. The other guy wants to balance it on your backs. I want to make fair and honest decisions that put our state on a course of job creation for the first time in 22 years. I want to invest in infrastructure. I want to invest in our colleges, our universities, and our public educational systems. I want to make sure that we're preparing a generation of people to take our place, because after all, we're the most rapidly aging workforce in America. If we fail those young people, who will take care of us? Who will take our place? Who will work in those new jobs that we want to bring to this state? There are tough issues to be addressed. It will not be easy. But you will be at the table. We will work together. I have made a promise, one promise to the leadership of the union movement for state and local employees, that we're always going to talk. And it's going to begin by my taking the suggestions that your union leadership has been carrying around in its pocket for years, giving us ideas on how to save money, how to make ourselves more efficient, how not to balance it simply on the backs of our state and local employees. I have made a promise that we sit down and we implement those suggestions or explain to you why we cannot. Because you've got to be treated as partners. And it's been a long time. 24 years since anyone in the governor's office actually looked at your face and saw the possibility of a partnership. So what we're really on the verge of doing is getting together to do what's right for us, for our children, for our grandchildren, and for the future of the state of Connecticut. We should not be a generation of people who leave this state with infrastructure that's not better than the way we found it, with school systems that are not superior to the ones we were educated in, to college systems that are not growing and vital and producing the kinds of workers that can actually find jobs in their state. If we only do things for ourselves, and we don't take care of those we care so deeply about, our fellow citizens, then we will not have fulfilled our complete mission. Because after all, everyone in this room is motivated not just for themselves. Because if you were, you wouldn't accept this leadership position. If you were, you would not have taken a job in the public sector. What we're going to do is create a new and better Connecticut. One that we can be proud of again. One that we can be assured of will produce the kinds of results that we want for the next generation. It'll only happen. It'll only happen if we find a way to do something which we have not done in 24 years. Let me be very clear. It would be a disaster for all of us if you wake up on November 3rd and say, if I'd only done a little more, we would have more state legislators with our agenda. If I had only done a little more, the state Senate would have people with our agenda. If I had only done a little more, the constitutional offices of comptroller and Attorney General and Secretary of State would be in the hands of people who believe as I do. And the worst nightmare that you could wake up to living on November 3rd would be to say to yourselves, to this movement, to your fellow citizens, to your wife or husband or your children, if I had only done a little more, we would have actually taken advantage to the best chance we had in a generation to elect a Democratic governor who believes in us. So I'm asking, just as you stuck your head out for me in convention and primary season, just as you stood with me, so many of you, as I attended your Democratic town committees over the last number of years, I'm asking you just to think about what it is you could do in the remaining 40 days of this campaign. You know, I also want to be respectful. I know some of you are independent voters or unaffiliated voters, and some of you are Republican voters. But the issues that confront this state cut across those definitions. Let me give you one for instance. Mr. Foley yesterday put out his health care plan. And in that plan, he called for cutbacks in Medicaid. He called for reducing expenditures. He called, most surprisingly and most dangerously for us, for health plans to be offered in the state of Connecticut free of mandates. Free of mandates. One mandate he once talked about in a press conference was he thought the mandate requiring the coverage of a wig for a woman undergoing chemotherapy was one that should be cut. Let me tell you about some of the other mandates that we have. That people not be moved out of the hospital in less than 24 hours if they've had a hysterectomy. We mandate coverage for cancer treatment and oncology treatment. We mandate hearing aids for children be covered. When someone running for public office, when their approach to curing the ills of healthcare is to offer plans free of mandates, what they're actually trying to do is to lower the bar so much that the only way to deal with that bar so low is to go back to people like you in municipal government, in state government, in corporations unorganized by labor and say, look what they did. You've got to do the same. This is a way of changing progressive policy. We shouldn't be talking about having fewer things covered as the way to make healthcare affordable. We should talk about pooling bills. We should talk about sustenance. We should talk about accessing every federal dollar that our state could to provide health care. And by the way, we have failed to access hundreds of millions of dollars, of federal dollars, and brought them back to our state based on ideological differences within our state. If you need no other reason, please concentrate on this, that there are people out there who don't believe that you deserve what you deserve. So as these 40 days tick by, as we approach that election, and as so many of our fellow citizens think that they don't have anything riding in this election, you need to pick up the phone, talk to your family members, even folks you haven't talked to in a few years. This might be a nice icebreaker. You need to talk to your neighbors and your churchgoers and your congregational members, and you need to make sure that they understand that this is a turning point in the history of the state of Connecticut. Either we stand up for the rights of people and we begin to right the ship of Connecticut. Either you believe that we can do it and that our best days can be ahead of it, or you believe that we're abject failures. You know where I stand. I stand with you. Thank you.